Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Merry Christmas, or Merry. What are we, 3-4 days after Christmas? It's almost time to say Happy New Year. Happy Monday to you and yours. Thank you so much for joining me. Man, so good to be back. I've missed you guys. I hope you've missed me. We have a lot to get into and very interesting weekend in the National Football League. A very interesting weekend in the National Football League. A lot to unpack and uncover today. We'll do it with me first. Then we'll bring our man Steve Kim, the Korean Kosel, into the conversation. Man, a rough weekend for sacred cows in the National Football League. If you're a Mike Tomlin supporter, if you're a Shedeur Sanders supporter, if you're a Lamar Jackson supporter, very, very rough weekend for you in the National Football League. We'll get into that. I'll get into all three of those topics: Mike Tomlin, Lamar Jackson, Shedeur Sanders. I'll toss in a little Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams discussion, a little Josh Allen discussion, and then we'll get to Steve Kim. Hopefully we can do all of this in about an hour and 15, and then I'll switch to the Harmony channel. There's some things I want to get off my chest about the Somali child care, daycare, fraud controversy that's playing out all over the internet, playing out on Fox News. I'm not sure if the rest of the media has picked up on it, but man, the fraud in America, the fraud in Minnesota has been exposed in a major way, and I've got a take on it. We'll do it on the Harmony channel around 11:15, hour and 15 minutes from now, hour and 20 minutes from now. So stick with me. Busy day on a Monday. We'll get you through this Monday. Not sure how much content we'll pump out this week because we're still, we got Justin on a holiday break. He's on some cruise somewhere. This is just me and Luke, and John Hadley giving us an assist. But I wanted to come out with some content because there's just too much going on to skip this whole holiday season. I want to remind you all, if you're listening over Apple, make sure you hit that 5-star rating right now. If you're listening over Apple, help us grow the channel, help us grow the network, help us grow the program. Hit that 5-star rating on Apple. If you still haven't taken care of all your Christmas gifts and you forgot to give your Lord and Savior a gift, please go to preborn.com/fearless right now, preborn.com/fearless, or dial #250 and say the keyword baby. make sure you're in the fight, helping us fight the abortion industry. All right, let's get to it. Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers have somehow figured out a way to blow the AFC North and will be fighting for their playoff life after losing to the Cleveland Browns yesterday 13-6. This is a nightmare scenario for Mike Tomlin supporters. I'm not sure if it's a nightmare scenario for Mike Tomlin because I'm not sure if Mike Tomlin can be fired. I'm not sure if the Pittsburgh Steelers will fire Mike Tomlin. But the perception is among the media like that Mike Tomlin should be fired if they don't beat the Baltimore Ravens in Week 18 on Sunday Night Football and make the playoffs. And because if they lose to the Baltimore Ravens, who as of right now probably won't have Lamar Jackson, I guess he's a 50-50 call. They've only had Lamar Jackson for about half of this season. He's been dealing with injuries the entire season. Joe Burrow has hold on, not the entire season. I think Lamar's like 6-6 this year. His record this year as a starter 6-6, so he's played about 12 games. But he's been banged up here late. Joe Burrow missed about half the season, so the Bengals have been no factor, although they're finishing strong with Joe Burrow. And Mike Tomlin with Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf and TJ Watt on some $150 million, $200 million contract, they can't even make the playoffs. They're in jeopardy of going 9-8 this year and missing the playoffs. There's a lot of people that will be calling for Mike Tomlin's head. And I don't know if I would call for Mike Tomlin's head, but I would be a part of the chorus that says, hey, man, it's time to move on. It's time to move on for Mike Tomlin. It's time to move on for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This thing has had an incredible run. He won a Super Bowl. He participated in a second Super Bowl. Went all of these years without ever having a losing season. But it is time to move on. How they lost that game to Cleveland, amazing. Amazing to me. How you lose that game to the Cleveland Browns, a team that's tanking, a team that's got a rookie quarterback who is clearly in over his head, and I'll get to that at some point, but I'm gonna pump the brakes on that. But how you, other than perhaps, if you watch that game, that game did not feel on the up and up to me. Now, I'm just sorry, hate to go full-blown conspiracy theorist, but I have to. Watching the way that game was refereed, particularly early, when they wiped out one of Aaron Rodgers' best passes on some bogus offensive pass interference call, I'm like, what are we doing here? I know the NFL needs some Week 18 games that matter, and they want that Pittsburgh-Baltimore to be a winner-take-all, so they'll have Sunday Night Football, and it seemed like they helped that process. But mostly this falls on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This falls on Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The end game play calling, throwing this ball to Valdez-Scantling over and over and over again like he was Randy Moss or Jerry Rice or Terrell Owens. We're talking about Valdez-Scantling. Who is he? They were, and listen, I know their receiving core without DK Metcalf is trash. And so you have to acknowledge that. You just don't throw fade routes to some number 3 wide receiver who's masquerading as a number 1 wide receiver. You just don't throw fade routes. You do something creative. And they just 3 times at the end of that game, they threw isolation plays, ran isolation for Valdez-Scantling. I'm like, what are they doing? This is the best they have? They don't have a slip screen. They don't have anything creative they could do? Nothing? And that's on the offensive coaching staff. But it's also, part of me is like, the NFL got the result that it wanted. It wanted the Pittsburgh Steelers to lose that game. It wanted Week 18, Pittsburgh versus Baltimore, to be a winner-take-all game. So the NFL very pleased with how poorly the Pittsburgh Steelers performed, only scoring 6 points in a must-win game. In a win and in game, the Pittsburgh Steelers score 6 points and now push all their chips into the middle of the table in Week 18 against the Baltimore Ravens and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry that ran for 200 and some odd yards over the weekend and had probably the single greatest performance of the entire NFL season. To him and Snoop Huntley are the backup quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. Now the Pittsburgh Steelers are about to get a heavy dose of Derrick Henry, and it may get a mixture. It may get some Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of pressure on Mike Tomlin. And if it doesn't cost him his job, it's certainly going to cement his reputation. Because if he does not get fired after missing the playoffs in a year where Joe Burrow misses half the season, in a year where Lamar Jackson has his worst season of his career, misses 4 or 5 games because of injury, and you can't make the playoffs, in a year where the Cleveland Browns have played Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, and you can't make the playoffs. And so getting fired isn't the worst thing that could happen to Mike Tomlin. It's the destruction of his reputation, because if they don't win next weekend, if they don't win Sunday night, and he keeps his job, that's the worst case scenario. If they lose and he doesn't get fired, that's the worst case scenario. If they lose and he gets fired, that's better than losing and not getting fired. Because if he loses and doesn't get fired, he will be branded unmistakably, well, this is just a DEI deal. This is just a race deal. No other coach could hold on to his job this long, having not a playoff win, I don't think, since 2016, 2017, haven't sniffed the Super Bowl in more than a decade. You've seen people like Andy Reid move on from a situation in Philadelphia where he was highly successful but had enough confidence in himself, and Philadelphia had enough confidence in themselves, like, hey, we got to go our separate ways, Andy. It's been great. You're great, but you got to go someplace else. Andy went someplace else, inherited Alex Smith, drafted Patrick Mahomes, and built a dynasty. That's who Mike Tomlin is supposed to be. If Mike Tomlin loses this game and the Steelers do not fire him, the Steelers will be smearing his reputation. They will be saying, hey, we have no standards for Mike Tomlin. He can do whatever he wants. He can be mediocre. His teams don't have to be a postseason threat. Because trust me, well, the Steelers would argue, hey, this is how we treat white coaches too, but no one would be buying that. Everybody would point to, like, this is a DEI thing. The Pittsburgh Steelers are afraid of Mike Tomlin. They're captured by the Rooney Rule that that ownership family started, the Rooney Rule. They're captured by that. They're not chasing Super Bowls. They're not doing the best, whatever they can do to win Super Bowls. They're not pursuing greatness anymore. They're a quota team with a quota coach. That's the reputation that awaits Mike Tomlin if he loses to the Baltimore Ravens and the Steelers don't fire him. So that's my first take, my first sacred cow, who's really, really had a rough weekend. All the shine coming off of Mike Tomlin. Here's the other sacred cow, or here's the second sacred cow that's had some shine come off him this weekend. And this story, not involving an actual game, actually overshadows everything that happened this weekend. The Mike Preston story, the longtime Baltimore Ravens reporter, the report that he came out with about Lamar Jackson and how maybe it's time for the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson to go their separate ways. That is the actual biggest story of the weekend. Lamar Jackson is in potential trouble in Baltimore. This is unbelievable. Let me read you this excerpt from Mike Preston's story. I wouldn't offer him another contract, and he's talking about Lamar Jackson, not with the injuries he has suffered this season. In fact, I'd ask him for a rebate like former great Tom Brady did with the New England Patriots. A discounted deal would let the Ravens sign some quality offensive linemen and put a cap on the 41 sacks taken by Baltimore quarterbacks in 15 games this season. You want better protection? Give back and we'll buy some. The Ravens have the same philosophy as most other teams in the NFL when it comes to overpaying a quarterback and then going light on the offensive and defensive lines. This story also goes on to say that Lamar Jackson actually wants to play in Miami. This story goes on to say that Lamar Jackson is actually an impediment to John Harbaugh and the coaching staff. It's not stated that strongly, but it is clearly insinuated. They start talking about, Preston writes about how they can't even practice at the times that most NFL teams are practicing because everything has to be done on Lamar's schedule. And Lamar likes to stay up late at night playing video games. Lamar likes to sleep in. Lamar Jackson doesn't like to practice until 1 in the afternoon. Most teams are now playing or practicing earlier in the day. But to accommodate Lamar Jackson in his sleeping patterns and his late night video game habits and his overall immaturity, this Mike Preston story is fascinating, and it piggybacks off the argument that I was making last week and trying to explain about this whole black quarterback phenomenon and what's the real impediment. That the black quarterbacks have a very difficult time finding shared values and a shared philosophy with the head coaches of these NFL franchises. And this story that Mike Preston wrote points out that, like, hey, man, there's actually some distance between Lamar and John Harbaugh. They're not on the same page. They're having to accommodate Lamar, who, Mike Preston, nice kid, everybody likes him, but Lamar Jackson, like a lot of young people given millions of dollars with a whole social media system rigged up to worship them, that Lamar Jackson's immature and petty and childish, and he's actually not on the same page with his head coach. This is the real issue here with a lot of black quarterbacks. It's not their talent, it's their values. And do they align with the head coach, who comes from a more traditional, a more military, a more fall in line, a more shared vision, shared values leadership approach? The Ryan Clarks, the Shannon Sharps, the social media, the Twitter, black Twitter would all say, well, that's the problem. We need more black coaches who can relate to the Lamar Jacksons and who will understand that Lamar needs to stay up late at night playing video games. That Lamar doesn't need to change his diet up. Because Mike Preston, in this article, he gets into like, no, Lamar needs to adopt the same training habits as Ray Lewis or an Ed Reed or a Rod Woodson. These guys that understood how to take care of their bodies and themselves in a way that would extend their careers, and they were always at peak performance. Anybody remember the late night video of Lamar Jackson out at like 11 o'clock midnight buying a hot plate from off the street, getting some chicken wings from off the street. You don't want your franchise quarterback in year 8 and 9 out late at night buying hot plates of chicken wings. That's not what you, particularly when he plays the quarterback position in the most physical way possible. He's a running quarterback. And now these hits that he's taken over the course of his career, they're starting to add up. I think it's been 3 of the last 4 or 5 years. Lamar Jackson has missed 3 to 4 games per season. He hasn't looked the same running the ball this season at all. The hits are adding up. Lamar's not taking care of himself in a fashion that would allow him to play. You can only play his style at quarterback for so long anyway. But he's not even doing the things to extend that window. Mike Preston, by the way, for those of you that don't know Mike Preston, probably worked for the Baltimore newspaper for 20 plus years, has covered the Ravens for 20 plus years, is a black dude. This isn't some racist white guy. This is a black reporter talking about the facts as it relates to Lamar Jackson, as it relates to his maturity level, as it relates to the way he takes care of himself, as it relates to the way he bends the organization to his will, his vision, his values, rather than promoting the shared values between he and the head coach. The quarterback head coach position, at the prices they're paying the coaches now and at the prices they're paying the quarterbacks, it's a partnership. And it's very hard to find a high-level coach who can partner with a guy that plays the quarterback position, gets paid $40, $50, $60 million a year, that wants to be up late at night playing Madden, playing Call of Duty, getting hot plates from the street. It's hard to partner with that guy. And the solution, according to the left-wing media and to all the woke media, well, just get a black coach that's into all the same thing as Lamar and they can play video games together. Well, that won't work because the successful black coaches actually have the same values as the successful white coaches. Now, if you want to bring in a Deion Sanders and go 4-8 one year, 9-4 the next, 3-9 the year after that, do that. Get you a hoodie wearing, gold chain wearing, rap music listening to coach who shares values with Lamar Jackson. You won't build anything sustainable. This Lamar Jackson story is incredible. He's won 2 MVPs. He's been one of the biggest stars in the league. He's 3-5, I believe, in playoff games. And he has, if you're reading the tea leaves here, and many people are, and they're speculating, they're like, Mike Preston doesn't write this story unless someone within the John Harbaugh camp has greenlit this story. That's not giving him permission. That's not what I mean by greenlit. It's by giving him information that would allow Mike Preston to draw the conclusions that he's reached. No one put a battery in John or in Mike Preston's back and said, hey, we need you to write a hit piece. Someone just provided their side of the story as it relates to, hey, what's going on here? Why have we underachieved? Why are we potentially going to miss the playoffs? Why is John Harbaugh potentially going to get fired? Why has John Harbaugh been unable to win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson? Because that is the standard. When you have one of these black quarterbacks that's been anointed by Twitter, social media, Ryan Clark, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, when those guys have been anointed, the standard is you must win a Super Bowl with them, and if you don't, it's your fault. None of the blame is on this quarterback. And so John Harbaugh, I'm not saying him personally, but someone in his agent, someone in his camp was like, hey, let me tell you the other side of the story. Lamar's great performer. But here are the issues. We can't even practice when most teams like to practice. Lamar Jackson, how much this could be an inevitable fall. He hasn't taken care of himself off the field so that he can continue to play this physical style of quarterback that he's been playing the last 7 or 8 years. And perhaps someone is putting out the argument, and any man would do this if they want to survive in their job. Well, let me tell you my side of the story. Lamar's great, but here are the problems with Lamar. We haven't been able to partner with him on a shared values and a shared vision because he doesn't share my values and he doesn't share my vision. The guy wants to play Call of Duty and Madden and other video games until midnight, 1 in the morning. He wants to go out in the middle of the night and get him a hot plate, something to eat. And then he wants to hit the practice field around noon, 1 o'clock. It's not sustainable. You can't win championships that way. Lamar Jackson, this Mike Preston story, who it's coming from, a very credible, the most credible football reporter in Baltimore, the most credible football reporter covering the Baltimore Ravens for 2+ decades. Mike Preston writing this and saying this is an ominous sign that there's a fight within the Ravens organization, and they will actually have a decision to make. And more than likely, they'll move on from John Harbaugh. And they'll pick someone that Lamar's most comfortable with as head coach. Whoever that is, they need to be very careful because Lamar may have peaked. The physicality, which made him special, the running ability, which made him special. It's not the passing ability. Lamar Jackson picks you apart from the pocket primarily because he's such a threat leaving the pocket that it's hard to defend him even as a passer. Well, now that he's not as physically gifted as he used to be, now that the hits are stacking up, his passing efficiency is going to dip, and he will be even less of a threat in the postseason when defenses elevate, tendencies become very, very important, and the defenses know how to pick you apart. Lamar Jackson may have peaked. The Baltimore Ravens will have a very interesting decision to make during the offseason. Maybe you move on from both. Maybe if Lamar Jackson would like to go to Florida and play for the Miami Dolphins, maybe you put together a great package and you get a bunch of draft picks in return. You get you a new head coach. You start drafting new players, and you rebuild and remake things in Baltimore. More than likely, though, and although, boy, when I sit here and think about this, the Ravens actually have some flexibility. Steve Bisciotti and his relationship, that's the owner, and his relationship with Ray Lewis and the history there. They built that whole organization around Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Ozzie Newsome. It's going to be real hard to play the race card on the Baltimore Ravens. But it can be done. We've seen more incredible things happen. The last sacred cow that took a hit, and this one took a hit in victory, Shedeur Sanders. I don't know if you guys watched this game as closely as I did. But, yes, the Cleveland Browns knocked off the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, you could argue Shedeur's stats maybe were better than Aaron Rodgers. But if you watch this game, what you saw was a fifth-round quarterback who cannot spin the ball. He is not an elite passer. His touchdown pass to Fannin was a gift. Steelers had the receiver, bracketed, covered well. Shedeur threw such a horrible hospital ball that both Pittsburgh DBs lost track of the football. Fannin is the only guy that could track it, made an adjustment, and caught the ball while falling down on his back. Hats off to Fannin. But Shedeur threw a hospital ball that was and if you watch this entire game, there was moments in the first 10 minutes of the game, of game time, where it's like, man, Shedeur, look at, man, he's throwing some balls here into, down the seam in the middle of the defense. He's attacking the middle of the defense. None of it looked all that pretty, but he was firing the ball to Jerry Jeudy and others in tighter places and in more threatening places down the middle of the field. And it was like, man, Shedeur. But then you would look and you would see, like, man, that ball is like a duck. It's getting there, but there's no tight spiral here. This isn't how an elite NFL quarterback or even top flight NFL quarterback, this is not how they spin the football. And then the rails just fell off. Shedeur had a ball batted at the line of scrimmage that was picked off. Then he came back and threw another ball that a linebacker should have picked off. And then they got late in the game, I think up 10-6, so they had a chance to salt the game away. And he threw another hospital ball that was picked off. And it went to nightmare scenario. And when you look at it in totality, if you watch that entire game, there's no QB evaluator that wouldn't go, hey, man, I don't think this guy can spin the ball, throw the football in bad weather. This ball's not coming out of his hand with a crispness, with any real velocity, with no precision. He's throwing ducks consistently. And then you look up and you say, man, in the last 3 games, Shedeur's thrown 7 interceptions. Oh, well, Jerry Jeudy dropped one, and you make any excuses you want. He's thrown 7 interceptions in the last 3 games. He's thrown 10 interceptions in his 6 starts. Shedeur Sanders can't spin the football, and it becomes more and more pronounced as the weather gets worse and worse and worse. If there's rain, if there's cold, if there's wind, Shedeur Sanders throws one of the worst footballs you will ever see. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's certainly not Matt Stafford. He's not even Jared Goff. And I know Goff plays indoors in Detroit. But if you look at Shedeur in totality, and if you've watched every game like I have and others have, the arm talent's not there. It's just not there. And it's really not there in a city like Cleveland, where there's wind coming off those lakes, where there's cold weather coming, where there's, again, he's in the wrong city for his arm. This guy is a backup quarterback at best. And I know, he got his second victory, and I know that, he threw a touchdown pass to Fan, and he's a rookie, and you got to be patient. No, you don't. You're paid to make these decisions. The same thing that I'm seeing, Kevin Stefanski can see, and Andrew Berry better be able to see as a general manager. When we move into late November and early December and weather becomes a real problem, Shedeur Sanders becomes inaccurate, and he throws a lot of ducks. A lot. This is not the Cleveland Browns franchise quarterback. Not at all. Anybody with a brain can see that. They better get Shedeur to a dome team or some hot weather team, and there he could be an effective backup quarterback. But throwing him out there in Cleveland, 17 games a year, throwing him out there in November and December in early January, Shedeur would be a nightmare. The Browns, so he's the Browns quarterback, and they get a home playoff game in January. No chance. No chance. This dude, it's a fact. I don't know if it's his hands aren't big enough. I don't know. It's growing up in Florida or growing up in Texas or whatever, but he's not built for the weather. And I've always felt, and I've had, from Jeff George to everybody's told me that I'm crazy for this, but I've always felt that a college football and an NFL football, there's a 2% difference in how they feel in your hand. Maybe it's a 5%. I've had other people, no, there's no difference. I disagree. Having, thrown both balls, and again, I'm no quarterback, but I'm just saying they feel different to me, and they come out different. And so it wasn't as pronounced a problem in college for Shedeur as it is now in the NFL. But he's not an NFL ball spinner, not even close. And that showed up in this, they should have blown Pittsburgh out. And by blown out, I mean should have been a 20-6 game if Shedeur had done anything. But after that first 10 minutes, the guy fell off a cliff and was horrible. May have thrown for 20, 30 yards in the second half. He was horrible. And if the Browns were a properly run organization, here's what they would do this week. When they play the Bengals, Dillon Gabriel would play half the game. I'm not saying you bench Shedeur, but there's no reason. Shedeur's had 6 straight starts. We've seen what it looks like. It doesn't look very good. You should take one last look at that midget who can't play. Again, I don't like the midget quarterback either. But these guys should get 50-50 reps this week coming up if it was a properly run organization. You drafted Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round. I think right now he's got 7 TDs, 2 interceptions. Shedeur, I think, has 7 TDs, 10 interceptions. There's no reason why in a properly run organization you wouldn't take a final look at both of these quarterbacks. But this is why you have to get rid of Shedeur. Because if you take Shedeur off the field to take another look at your midget quarterback you drafted in the 3rd round, Shannon Sharp, Ryan Clark, all these black Twitter people will call you racist and try to run you out of town and smear your reputation. How dare you? You're not giving Shedeur a chance. As if the entire organization has been running on what's best for Shedeur for the last 6-7 weeks. You can't run an organization based on, hey, what's best for our 5th round quarterback who can't process the game that well from a thinking position and can't spin the football at an NFL level in weather conditions or just on a consistent basis. But we're doing every decision we're making in this organization is based off what's best for our 5th round quarterback. You got to dust Shedeur. You have to. You have no choice. He's poisoning and compromising the entire organization. No one else can be developed. People are looking that hospital ball that Fannin caught. People are celebrating like it was, Joe Montana and the pass to Dwight Clark in the back of the end zone. Let me move on to a more provocative, but a more counterintuitive take that I just want to get off my chest before we get to Steve Kim. Caleb Williams last night, to me, and I thought Brock Purdy was magnificent. And that game last night, very exciting, 3-point game. What did they score? 100 points, 100. They scored a bunch of points last night. Exciting game. San Francisco knocks off the Bears. Brock Purdy accounts for 5 touchdowns. I think he threw 3, ran for 2. Everybody's celebrating Brock Purdy, and I get it. Congratulations, Brock Purdy. Magnificent game. What I'm about to say is not a slight at Brock Purdy. It's just how I legitimately felt at the conclusion of that game. I was more impressed with Caleb Williams. And that might be because my standards, my expectations were lower for Caleb Williams, the Bears quarterback. But I left that game going, because again, I'm not a Caleb Williams guy. Guy paints his fingernails. He's a weirdo. I got very low expectations for Caleb Williams. But I left that game last night like, man, the Bears really got something. And it may have been because I spent, part of the day, a big part of the early part of the day, watching Shedeur Sanders. And then I'm looking at people pretend like Shedeur Sanders has the kind of arm talent that Caleb Williams has. And he just doesn't. And I'm looking at the Bears. They could have won that game, had every chance to win that game. The Bears are actually a good football team. And I never thought I would be saying that about Caleb Williams. And so I left that game last night, as great as Brock Purdy was, and I don't mean that as a slight at Brock Purdy, but when I just compare arm talent, I'm like, man, I see why Caleb Williams was the number 1 overall pick. And it's nice what Brock Purdy's doing as Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick of a draft a few years ago. But the upside on Caleb Williams, if he doesn't become a mental case, if he doesn't go overly feminine, this kid could be something special. My final take before we get to Steve Kim, Josh Allen. We saw the good and the bad in Josh Allen yesterday. Guy's an incredible talent. I don't know how he missed that 2-point conversion at the end of the game. I don't know how. I don't know how he pulled a Shedeur Sanders and took a 19-yard sack or 18-yard, 19-yard sack on the drive before that and took him out of field goal range. Josh Allen does things that I don't know how he thought he threw the ball while fumbling it, stood there, had no reaction to what I thought was a pretty obvious fumble as the guy ran the other direction with the football. Josh Allen, I love his talent, but he just does things that just leave me. How do you take that sack? How do you fumble that football and then pretend like you didn't fumble it and have no reaction, make no effort to tackle the guy running the other way with the football? And then how do you miss Shedeur wide open in the end zone? Love Josh Allen. But, man, their defense played lights out last night and put him in position to pull off a big victory, and he just let them down. Just let him, we can stop all. My little MVP case for Josh Allen went away last night. None of that. All right, I'm going to take a break because I want to take a little sip of water. When we come back, Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell, will join me. X. They can make anything sound good. The words that I'm saying right now on this show, they can put a beat behind it, beat behind it, beat behind it, beat behind it, and put their sales team behind it, and put their television industry behind it, and put their internet algorithms behind it, and make the words that I'm saying right now into a rap song. Beat behind it, beat behind it, beat behind it, that the idiots in the world, and I'm talking about me and everybody else, we will buy it and call it great. Beat behind it, beat behind it. The music industry doesn't reward talent, not the American music industry, not the world's music industry. It doesn't reward talent. It rewards the promotion of degeneracy.
As the NFL turns, starring quarterbacks Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, with special appearances from Commissioner Roger Goodell and coaches Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, and the Harbaughs. Brought to you by the global elites.
All right, welcome back. Steve Kim, let's get right into it. Let's start with Mike Tomlin. Uh, you put that loss on Tomlin. How much responsibility for Pittsburgh's embarrassing loss to the Browns do you lay at the feet of Mike Tomlin?
Well, the coach is always responsible. They are the accountable party. But, Jason, just when I thought they were about to prove us wrong, that they're not just a garden variety 9-8 type of team that we've been accustomed to seeing and sneaking into the playoffs, and you say, you know what, they're better than we. They reverted. They're exactly who we thought they were. Do not crown them. They look lifeless on offense. Aaron Rodgers can still make a few throws, but he's not the quarterback that he was. That was to be expected. The offensive line had issues with that ferocious Browns pass rush. And I just look at Pittsburgh as being in purgatory. They really are. They're not bad enough that you rebuild, and they're just good enough to make the playoffs. But this is the torture chamber that the Steeler fans have been in for at least 6 to 7 years. And every year, their gripe is, we're going somewhere to nowhere. Because, Jason, let's be honest, this looks like another team that might make the playoffs, going to sneak in, and guess what? They're going to get bounced in the first round.
What did you think of my biggest gripe with Tomlin? And again, I know he's not the offensive coach, but how they get to the end of the game, there's no DK Metcalf, and they're throwing to Valdez-Scantling like he's Megatron. Or Terrell Owens. I was like, what do you? This is a number. There was nothing creative, Steve, that they could come up with around the goal line to get a touchdown late.
You know, former NFLer Brendan Fajoko, who's very provocative, he said something interesting I hadn't thought of the whole year. You know what would have been nice for the Steelers? George Pickens. And I was like, wow, because we know the issues with George. There's always going to be issues. It's always something, right? You know what he also gives you? A lot of big plays. A lot of big plays. And if you're going to hitch your wagon to an older quarterback, don't you think George Pickens as your true number one might have worked out? I mean, I've always thought George was a talented but temperamental guy. That has not changed. I didn't know he was this good, though. Some of the plays he made, I'm thinking to myself, so that I read the tweet this morning from Brendan, and I'm like, he may have a point. Maybe, just maybe. It's easy for me to say, or you and I, we don't deal with the headache. Maybe it would have been worth it to keep Pickens around if you're going to have an Aaron Rodgers.
Well, look, you got the headache with DK Metcalf.
Without the production.
Yeah, a worse headache. I mean, DK's been productive, but George Pickens, I don't think would have gotten suspended for the last 2 games of the season for taking a swing at a fan. So you got the headache that you thought, well, without George Pickens, we won't have the headache. Well, no, you actually got a worse headache, and you get to the end of the season, and DK Metcalf has basically sabotaged, because I don't know. I don't think they're going to beat Baltimore.
I don't either. I still look at Baltimore as being one of the more talented teams, which, because of their record, they are now one of the more underachieving squads of the 2025 season. But again, if the Steelers get into the playoffs and then they lose in the first round, I think it's actually a tough sell now to, I would say, not a large majority, Jason, but I would say still a majority of Steeler fans who would rather just hit rock bottom ground zero and just start this thing over again. Because again, they're going somewhere to nowhere.
I want to segue into Lamar Jackson because I actually think this is the most fascinating story of the entire weekend. And the games were interesting yesterday, but the Mike Preston story, given Mike Preston's credibility, history covering the Ravens, the things he's kind of unpacked about Lamar Jackson, it's the first time we've seen any reporting that actually challenges anything about Lamar Jackson. It's kind of been illegal to suggest that, hey, there's some issues that go along with Lamar. What do you think of that story?
Well, first of all, Mike Preston should win a Pulitzer or something. And look, can we be honest? I don't think a white writer could have written that in today's climate. I really don't. I don't think they could have taken the heat. Most of them don't have the guts to do it anyway. And Mike Preston, I think, understood when he hit send. And I'm sure you've written columns like this, Jason, where you're like, okay, Wayne Simmons is going to probably try to kill me at a strip club in about a week, which actually happened. And you hit that button. It takes guts to do it. And Mike Preston, I've seen for years on documentaries where he's one of the voices. He's one of the elders. He's respected. And the fact that it was he who wrote it and not some unknown blogger, I think gives it a lot of weight. But it goes to show you that results matter, because if the Ravens were, let's say, 12-3, trending for the number one spot, I don't know if this story has as much credibility. But I think it's clear. But Jake, don't you think you're giving not us, don't you think people now are letting Harbaugh get a little bit of a free run here, because he's the head coach here? This is a pretty talented roster, and they're 8-8.
Yeah, I Steve, I gotta apologize. Tiny bit distracted. My mother's here, and there's a hey Luke, give me a 60-second break. Give me a 60-second break, and we'll be right back. Hey.
I wish I had a voice, I would raise it now for all the silent ones no one seems to care about. I'd speak for all of us. Crank the volume up and let the simple truth cut through the noise. I wish I had a voice. Oh, yeah. I'm the trucker that they're phasing out. She's a housewife, but you can't say that now. I'm a laid off factory worker whose factory's China bound. We're the coal miners, the firefighters, the Charlie Kirk choir, letting our lighters finally waking up. We've had enough of the liars setting the world on fire.
These words are our religion, no regrets in our decisions. We all wanna go to heaven with freedom. It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
All right, welcome back. I apologize, Steve. Anyway, it's some uninvited visitor at my. Anyway, I can't. Can we go back to? And I apologize to the audience. I apologize to Steve. Steve, what was your point? Because I was multitasking, listening to my mother fuss with somebody downstairs. Make your point.
Oh, I thought you were playing the role of a Steeler fan, talking to Mike Tomlin. Get out of here. Anyway, so look, has Lamar Jackson been the player he has been in recent years? And when he played at an MVP level, no. Has injuries played a factor? Yes. Is age now a factor? Yes. Is there a good chance with this given style of play that his decline with the loss of athleticism will be more pronounced? Yes. All of that is true. Now, could his lifestyle and his habits have contributed to this? Well, I think Mike Preston is a credible source. I think he's a real pro. With that said, there's a shared responsibility here with Harbaugh. Because every time I see Derrick Henry rampaging through secondaries where people do not, I'm just thinking, well, wait a minute. You had that guy the whole time, basically. Why wasn't he ridden? If you have a quarterback that has a physical ailment and is not exactly at his physical apex, why not ride 22 all the way to the finish line? Look, the defense has not been good. They've had some issues, but I still look at that overall roster and I say to myself, even with their injuries, they should be better than 8-8.
Well, they should be, but I think what Mike Preston's pointing out is that Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh are not on the same page. They can't even practice when they'd like to practice because Lamar likes to stay up late at night. Lamar, I believe it's been 3 of the last 4 or 5 seasons, has missed 3 to 4 games every year. Some people have been saying, like, this is inevitable. He's a running style quarterback that takes hits, and eventually the hits were going to catch up with him. And eventually, something Marty Schottenheimer taught me a long time ago, most coaches believe it, but I heard it from Marty Schottenheimer, availability is the most important ability.
Yeah.
And it's finally catching up with Lamar.
Look, we have to be realistic about this. We know that there's a different set of rules for superstars. Lamar Jackson is a superstar, and the tail can wag the dog. However, when you are a franchise quarterback, whether it's fair or not, you are defined by championships. My view is this. If Lamar had delivered me a Lombardi or two, I'll let him set the practice time for 6 o'clock at night. That is the truth. Now, because you've won MVPs, yeah, you get a little grace. But when you look at Ray Lewis, 2 Super Bowls. Ed Reed, all-time great, finished with the Super Bowl. Jonathan Ogden was a part of a Super Bowl team, right? We had this conversation about 2-3 years ago, Jason, when he was going through his contract negotiation, the current one he's under. And I think I made the comment that if everything goes right, by the time it's all said and done, Lamar Jackson should have a statue outside that stadium, and he would be part of that Mount Rushmore of all-time Ravens, right? It's Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Ogden, and that 4th spot. I mean, would it be T. Sizzle? Would it be, I don't know, Haloti Nada, whatever, that Jamie Sharper, whoever it is.
Saragusa
or Sam Adams, one of those guys, right? So my question is this. Let's say it's the end. It just ends. There's a blockbuster trade. And by the way, I don't know of a lot of prime quarterbacks in their physical prime or still have a lot of years left that get traded at that stage of their careers. I really don't when they're still kind of playing. Maybe Drew Brees, that was kind of a situation. But Jason, if it ended right now, does Lamar Jackson make the Mount Rushmore of Baltimore Ravens football?
No, he didn't win a Super Bowl.
Ooh.
No. And I mean, I understand. If someone argued yes, I'd get it. He's got 2 MVPs. He's been face of the franchise for that amount of time. I get it. But no, he was there to win Super Bowls. He didn't reach his destiny, and he would have basically have forced his way out of Baltimore. And I think how you exit matters. Steve, what I'm fascinated by is if you were the Miami Dolphins, would you be interested in acquiring Lamar Jackson?
Yes, because you know what you have with Tua. Quinn Ewers, he showed some flashes, but I am not a big Mike McDaniel fan. I'm not, okay? But could you imagine the creativity you could have with Lamar? But again, here's the issue. You're on the second half of his career athletically. We don't know if he's the same guy, but if you're the Dolphins, you're in a very tough city for entertainment options because there's so many of them. You want to have some juice. You want to have some relevancy. Lamar Jackson coming back to South Florida as a conquering hero for a year or two, I think there'd be incredible buzz and it'd be a very, very intriguing story.
Yeah, and it could be Herschel Walker 2.0 all over again, too. You could end up mortgaging your future and trading Baltimore a dynasty.
Here's the problem with Baltimore then. Okay, let's look at it from their side. Who do you get in return? And also, say what you want. Whatever flaws Lamar has in his game as a quarterback, we kind of know what they are. He still plays at a pretty high level. Are you guaranteed to even be 80% of your quarterback efficiency if you move on? See, it's easy to move on. That's fine. Who do you get to replace him?
Well, here's where I think we've gone with the quarterback position and why this is even a possibility. It's hey, man, if you get the right OC and a quarterback that will cooperate with the OC head coach, you can. It's a lot easier to play quarterback in this league than it used to be. And so, again, I look at Caleb Williams, who's winning me over. I look at Drake May, who's won everybody over. I look at Tyler Schaaf, that looks like he's having some success. That, Baltimore is an organization that says, hey, man, we won with Trent Dilfer. We won with Joe Flacco. We haven't won with Lamar. And so maybe having the most talented quarterback isn't the thing that, makes championships a possibility in Baltimore.
Jason, you brought something. Joe Flacco might be the fourth guy on that Mount Rushmore. He won a Super Bowl. He had a great postseason in 2012. I think he was actually the MVP of that Super Bowl against the Niners. I would love to ask Raven fans, who is higher on your pecking order if you had an all-time Raven team? The guy with the MVPs or the guy that brought you a Super Bowl? Lamar or Flacco?
Let me move on to my favorite topic, Shedeur, or Shedeur Sanders. And we got the full Shedeur sandwich yesterday. After a hot start, Steve, the first 10 minutes of that game, I was like, look at Shedeur was actually winning me over. And then the rest of the game happened, and I'm like, nope, he's exactly who I thought he was. Shedeur Sanders is no one's franchise quarterback. Steve, he can't spin the football. He throws more ducks than any quarterback I've seen, maybe any quarterback in NFL history.
I believe that Shedeur has enough ability to stick around as a guy that could make a career. In other words, be a backup or a spot starter or a starter on a very bad to mediocre club. I will say that. But if I listen to some of the discourse, and I don't know if they're Brown fans or Shedeur fans who are now Brown fans who ditched all their Colorado gear. So I'm trying to figure this out. But it's amazing. Like, people actually thought he was good yesterday. And I'm thinking, again, the standards you set for somebody is what you really think of them. Jason, he still holds the ball way too long. And that one interception that he threw on that fourth down, I said, there's no defending this. Now, look, one of his interceptions was a deflection. I thought that was bad luck. But also, you're right, that touchdown, terrible ball skills by the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive back. He is what he is. I think he's serviceable. He's limited. And when you play in Cleveland with those conditions, the wind, the cold, the snow, you got to have an above average arm. You got to have some real arm strength. And you're right, Jason. He seems to aim the ball really softly, and that is always going to be a little bit problematic.
Look, an equally important story from that game to me, and I'm inviting you to contradict, push back, disagree with me here. But Deion at this game, what do Colorado fans think? The guy won't leave his house to recruit, but he's traveling to every Shedeur game. At some point, somebody in Colorado that's paying Deion's bills should object, no?
There's no need for us to disagree. I've said it for at least 2-3 years. When you have a coach, even in today's NIL era, and I think that's a large part of recruiting now, will not leave his front door to make recruiting visits like every other coach in the country, that is an issue. And Jason, you're right. So basically, let's just look at the optics here. No, I'm not going to leave. The players can come to me. And that gives a whole new meaning to in-home visit, right? But to watch my son, I'll travel all across the country and make it a big deal. You don't think that's being negatively recruited against Colorado?
I think without question. Steve and the audience, I got to apologize. We're going to wrap up here because I got some other issues still going on here. I hope you guys appreciate, though. This is all extra bonus content during the holidays. But I got to wrap it here. I will be on the Harmony channel We will be there, I would think, at 11:20. So 15 minutes from right now, I'll be on the Harmony Channel. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.